It is a pleasure to have Dr. Ryan Duckworth, clinical psychologist and founder and owner of Hope and Wholeness Psychology Center in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. Ryan, welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to chat with you.
Great. So please tell our audience the basics of the practice. Tell us about sort of size, number of clinicians.
So I started this practice about 8 years ago, a little bit sooner in my career than I thought I would, but I found myself, praying for 12 clients a week that first year. We've grown now over the past 8 years to having 6 locations and about 36, 37 clinicians right now, and talks about a seventh location as well. So a lot of fun, a lot of work, pretty crazy journey for sure.
Well done. And if you were to look back on this journey now, for all those years ago, what would you have told yourself was the biggest challenge in getting to this point?
I know exactly what I would say actually, because I've thought about it. I would say be clear about your mission and your vision. Be clear about the foundation that you're building your business upon. Because I think that I did have a mission vision statement and it hasn't changed much over the last 8 years, but I do now feel sometimes like I'm a little bit stuck with the mission and vision that I have. I don't have like this specific idea of what I would change it to, but I know the type of practice we've built, and it's very difficult to change the culture, to change the mission and the vision, 8 years in, when you've got 30 people that are not actually employees, they're contractors. And so you're a leader, but it's also kind of a contractual relationship more than an employer relationship. A lot of dynamics there. And so I would say really think about your mission and vision. And as hard as it is, think 5 years down the road, think 10 years down the road, and think, what is this going to be like if I grow and hire based on this foundation? What do I imagine this will look like? And is that what I'm looking for? I think I did pretty good. I really love where I'm at in life. I have a great life. I have a great practice. I love all the clinicians. My practice manager is amazing. But I think that there are some things that I'm thinking, like if I were to, right now, if I were to sell my practice and start another one, I know it would be a little bit different. I don't even know exactly what I would choose, but I know I'd choose something a little bit different to grow it on.
So how would you articulate, I mean, listeners can read the website, but sitting here talking, how would you articulate the mission and the vision originally? Yeah. And can you sort of walk us through some of your internal conversations around roughly like what the change might look like?
Absolutely. So the current mission and vision, not verbatim, is to provide compassionate, effective, research-based psychological intervention for anybody from any background and to be part of the healing ministry of Jesus. The vision is really a community where anybody from any background can come to Hope and Wholeness and know that they're going to be loved, they're going to be accepted, they're going to be treated with dignity and respect, and that we are going to create a plan for reaching their goals that they're involved in. That's the basics of the mission and vision. And again, I don't know how I change it, but kind of like one of the main things that I've batted around in my head about the mission and vision is, do I want a practice that has the same Christian faith as me? Or do I want people who have a different faith? And if they have the same faith, how much difference am I going to tolerate or be okay with? I also would have considered more that I'm going to attract people who are similar to me pretty much in every way. Can you hire people who are different from me? 100%. But who am I going to connect with? Who's going to trust me? Who's going to feel comfortable with me? That's something to consider as well. I think the first 4 or 5 people I hired were fairly well aligned with me. Now, actually, a couple of them I would say that they're still aligned with me in terms of like compassion and love for other people. But I would say in terms of like the expression of that, it's slightly different, which I think is good. It's fine. But I think that those first few people I hired really determined the direction and the type of culture that we established in our practice. And I don't think I realized at the time the significance of that. So I think that I would put a lot more thought into the types of people that I hired first. And if I wanted to have a practice that was really, truly diverse, I think I would have put more effort into hiring some people who were distinctly different from me in the beginning. Because and not that I even intentionally thought about exactly who I was hiring, but the first few people, I was like, wow, they're a Christian, they believe in God, and yet they have love for everybody. They're going to be welcoming to racial, sexual minorities. And I guess to put it plainly, I would just say to have more purpose, intentionality, and direction about the type of people that I'm going for initially, because that's the foundation upon which we're going to attract and build other people. Does that make sense?
That's such a rich answer. Thank you for that. There's 8 different follow-up questions I could have. Where I'm going to go next is, and one of the things that's come up in a number of podcast interviews so far is that importance of distinguishing yourself. So the fact that, your Christian message is at the core, right, of what you wanted to build, that's distinct, right? There
Yeah.
are definitely other practices like that, but the majority are not. And if I'm a
Mhm.
clinician and I'm deciding, or I'm a patient, I'm
Yeah.
deciding where to go, that gives me a really distinctive opportunity to decide yay or nay.
Absolutely.
So that's important. And we see this especially for attracting clinicians, which is one of the biggest challenges most group practice owners have.
Yeah.
Creating a distinct brand that is true to who you and the core people in the practice are. That's
Yeah.
important. But similarly, so is diversity of thought. There's all different kinds of diversity. There is pretty strong evidence that diversity of thought, which can come from people who take many different forms, but diversity of thought, when you're dealing with complex challenges that people's lives come up in therapy all the time, they're pretty damn
Yeah.
complex, right?
Yeah.
But how do people create a distinct brand? How do they balance creating a distinct brand with the importance of diversity of thought, especially in a complex field like therapy?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you're probably going to get a long-winded answer to that big question. But I would say that also our practice is definitely built on the foundation of my love for other people, my care for other people, coming from my faith and coming from how I believe Jesus loves people. And that's a distinct thing, much more in my personal practice or my personal, I guess, belief system than it is in others. But it is something to definitely consider because although I'm a unique individual, people see our website, they see that we have the healing ministry of Jesus in our mission and vision, and they think a lot of different things about that. They are going to interpret that through the lens that they've personally lived, that culture gives them to look through it. And so there's a lot of pros and cons to that. But in terms of kind of your question, yeah. So I would say that those two things are definitely compatible. But like I mentioned already, the part that can be difficult is that your mission vision is going to be pretty specific. It's going to distinguish, and it's also probably going to attract people who are similar. And so I think that having something in your mission and vision statement and in the way that you practice that also values diversity is really important. So it was only a couple years ago that we put a diversity inclusion statement on our website. We put quite a bit of time and energy into creating it because this was something that we weren't going to change our mission and vision, but we wanted it to distinguish ourselves and really kind of clarify who we are as a group and in some ways how our Christian foundation is now involved in kind of forming the culture of our practice. So I'm just going to read it. Our goal is to be a place where anyone is welcomed and supported on their journey towards hope, healing, and wholeness. We know our commitment to diversity and inclusion is central to being able to achieve this vision of welcoming everyone. We work hard to foster a culture where love and care for others is authentic and automatic. We understand that unique perspectives generate better ideas and improve our ability to help the people we serve. We realize that welcoming everyone is a lofty goal because of the polarizing differences in our culture, but this is part of what makes it a goal worth striving for. We believe in creating a safe space for all communities and people, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious beliefs, disability, or socioeconomic status. I almost love that as much, or maybe even more than our mission and vision statement. And I feel like this really gives people the information that they need to know that we do value your distinctive beliefs and that you need to be a distinct person in private practice to be successful. And you're going to find that I'm a distinctive person and I'm going to be my authentic self. And you're going to hear about my spiritual beliefs, but you're going to hear about them in the context of love and respect and not what some of our culture kind of perceives as the negative things about anybody who has strong convictions. Because anybody with strong convictions can very easily cross that line into disrespect, in my opinion. So we want to tell them exactly who we are. And so that actually, I probably didn't think about this much until you asked me, but I think that probably has improved. I think the last several people that we've hired, they don't have, maybe as much difference from me as I would like, but we are hiring some different people, that's for sure. And I think that meeting with me, knowing that that's on our website provides them a little bit more clarity and a little more confidence in choosing where they're going to be employed.
Well, I salute what I think is really your courage in standing for what you believe, right? But in also staying true to the core of what you're here to do. Love has to be at the core of all therapy. It has to be at the core of how we care for our teams, right?
Mhm.
All the people around us. I think you're courageously standing for both. You're right that anyone
Yeah.
with strong convictions, like any practice, I interviewed a gentleman named Eric Arzubi who runs a psychiatry practice, which is devoted to providing telepsychiatry to very remote communities in Alaska, Montana, Idaho. And that's a very distinct message. He's standing for something. Not
Yeah.
everyone agrees that telepsychiatry is what we should be doing in remote
Right.
communities, right? And so when you stand for something, you do attract some level of controversy, and there's a courage
Yeah.
inherent in it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Especially in our culture and our society. I say it is a lofty goal to have all those differences in the same room, especially with people with the strong convictions that they have these days. It's even scary sometimes, that's for sure.
Does this make for different interviews, perhaps, than you might see with other group practices, where in standing for what you stand for, but in an inclusive, loving way? Do you still find that makes for some pretty vulnerable job interviews with clinicians?
It does. There have been several job interviews where I've been able to, basically have a corrective emotional experience with people, interacting with a white male in my position of power in a practice like that, Christian person. Absolutely. There has been some really cool, and I preach this a lot as well, is that, love is our primary motivator. And the reason is because love, I believe, is what changes people. It's an experience that changes people. People don't get changed usually by logic. I can present you an argument, Dan, but I don't really think that you would be totally changing your beliefs from one side to the other because I gave you a logical argument. But if I invite you into my home and I give you an experience of what it's like to live this other logical argument that I'm making, you're going to be far more impacted by that. And that's how I was impacted even in graduate school with loving other people who are different from me. It's like I met these people and I was like, wow, I'll be honest with you. I was like, wow, you're gay and I like you. You're a good person. And they were like, you're a Christian and we're hanging out. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so we both had this experience of love that changed us. And honestly, my beliefs moved towards theirs and their beliefs moves towards mine. We moved closer as a result of the experience, not of any type of logical argument.
I love your answer about love. Are you able, and if not, totally cool, are you able to share a story or two on a no names basis about a job interview with a clinician where, the power of love was an animating force?
Yeah. I could share
'Cause this
several.
can be really helpful for practice owners,
Yeah.
right? Who are thinking about how they interview. It's so important.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to do my best. I remember one in particular with a person that we were looking to hire. And we were sharing and talking, typical interview. And I'm a little bit more like down to earth, both in terms of my genuineness in relating to others. Now, I'll wear a collared shirt, but I'm generally speaking just a little bit less professional. I tell people straight up, I'm straightforward, I'm transparent, I'm honest. I'm going to ask you all the questions. You have the right to ask me all those questions right back. I pretty much say that every interview. And I ask people very specifically, what are your spiritual beliefs and how do those impact your practice? Because in my opinion, everybody has spiritual beliefs and it is a sign of growth as a clinician to be able to know how those spiritual beliefs impact the therapy room. It's not a question of discrimination of this or that. It's anybody needs to know how what you're bringing into that room is affecting your client. And so I ask them that. I say, tell me about a time that you worked with a client was different from you and it was hard because everybody, in my opinion, should have that experience in their clinical training. But it came about that she had told me that she had, I believe, a child die at a very young age, if I remember right. And she had said something like, it's just I'm okay with it now. God has shown me that how he's, brought good out of it and how, he caused it to happen for a reason, I think is what she said. He made it happen for a reason. And I, in my typical style, use Socratic dialogue. I'm like, oh, where did that thought come from? And like, where did that belief come from? And who told you that? Where did you see that in the Bible? Just really honest, genuine questions to get her. And by the end of the session, she was like in tears. She's like, oh my gosh, it wasn't God who caused this. It was the devil who caused this. I'm like, yes, the devil is the stealer of life and the author of bad things. And she was able to have kind of a corrective experience of God in an interview with me of not blaming God for something bad that happened or having to accept something that God did that was bad. And I didn't even put that thought in her head because I don't really believe in me telling somebody what my opinion is. But helping somebody kind of get to a conclusion on their own that's going to kind of be helpful for them. I'm all about that. And some people would definitely not be that bold. And some people might even disagree with how I do an interview. And I'm totally okay with that. And I'll be like, hey, you have some legitimate concerns about that. But that's how I am. And I remember another experience was with a lesbian woman that had some kind of relationship trauma and had definitely had bad experience with Christians before. And again, I apologize. I don't remember all the details, but I was in tears. I was in tears apologizing to her for how she had been treated. And she did not end up joining our practice. And she was transparent with me that it was it was going to be a real stretch for her to be in an environment where at least 50% of the people were Christians and she wasn't sure how they were going to take her. And I said, I 100% hear you. And you do not have to shoulder all that responsibility in our practice. Some of that is on me. Like, I can't be a gay woman in our practice and be that person. But if you don't want to be that person, I 100% support you. And I remember the practice that she joined, and I said, that is going to be great for you. And I'm so pumped for you to be in a place where you're going to be at your best, because where you're at your best, you're going to do your best work. Your clients are going to get the best outcomes. I'm almost tearing up right now. Like, I love that person. I wanted her at my practice. We had such a good time together. Yeah.
I love it. Now, that is raw and real. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. I think that's going to provide great fodder for other group practice owners who are doing these interviews, who perhaps haven't built the same distinctive brand that you have, right? And you're honoring your brand, right? You're being both Christian but also loving. That's who you are. That's what your brand is, right?
Yeah. And not controlling too. Not controlling. I don't want to control people. I want to help people live their best life.
Yeah. And you're not attached to the outcome. You did want her at some level, but you also appreciated that her decision might have been, there may be another environment that's a better fit, right?
And it totally made sense. I mean, if somebody's telling me something that's totally illogical, I'll be like, help me understand this, but most of the time that's not the case.
Yeah, no, I love the raw honesty, which in our conversation so far, Ryan, you are such a champion of. So I so appreciate that quality in you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
And I imagine your clinicians do as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I believe they do.
Yeah. So you guys also do testing, yes?
Yes.
Not just
Yeah.
Tell me about that element of the equation.
Yeah. To be totally frank, we have an amazing limited license psychologist that does probably 90%, 95% of our testing. And I have no question that she is smarter and knows more about testing than me, even though she only has a master's degree. And she is really the champion of our testing program. I did start it and I still do a couple cases a month, just like I've kind of always done. I enjoy that. But it's been really rewarding also to work with her. Her name is Kara, and just talk about cases together. I love looking at the data. I love figuring things out. I love giving people at the end of their testing, when I'm giving them feedback, I like to give them a new perspective or a new lens to look at their life and their issues. Not just, here's your diagnosis, here's some recommendations, go do CBT. You know what I mean? I think it's about how the best thing that I can give them is a different angle on what they already know is happening within them. And if a diagnosis helps them put words to it, great. But between you and me, on a more philosophical level, I don't really believe in diagnosis. Like, people have issues, they come in and I work with them to address their issues, and it's never the same. I don't give the same antibiotic to every person. Like, I'm so glad that the medical field has that, but that's just not how psychology and therapy works. Like, we have to get paid. So we have these clusters of symptoms that we say is this, but every person is so different, and it's all this continuum of things. That's our testing program. We test probably about 15 to 20 people a month between Kara and I. And that definitely keeps us busy.
Such an interesting point you make, and maybe a subject for another conversation, but it's an interesting point about what is it about mental health and psychology that are different, right? From perhaps other medical domains where diagnosis is a bit more the norm, right? And that's a whole interesting conversation. But I think it's neat that you do offer testing, because few practices do, right? At their core, most outpatient practices are therapy focused. So I think there is good evidence that testing can make the therapy more effective.
Absolutely.
Tell me just a little bit as we start to come towards the end of our time together. Tell me about sort of what the future of the practice holds. So you've built this to this point where it's more than 35 clinicians. You got 6 locations, a 7th on the way. What are you building towards?
My personal mission statement that I don't actually have it written down in its current form, but I created it. I remember I was in high school. I might have been in 9th or 10th grade. And I told the Lord, I said, God, I just want to make a bigger impact. I just want to do something bigger than me. More than I can just do on my own. I just want to do something I didn't say this, now I would say multiplication. I don't want to do addition. I want to do multiplication. I want to do something more powerful to impact people. And I didn't really want to go to college. I ended up going to college. Didn't really want to go to grad school. Ended up going to grad school because I knew what I needed. And then God helped me to see what I would need to make the impact I wanted to make. And I thought that group practice was it. I remember my 3rd year thinking, I've arrived. I have a house. I have a family, a beautiful family, beautiful children. I don't even know how, Lord, I don't even deserve this, but thank you. And my group practice is great. I'm making 6 figures and paying all the bills. Sweet. And then I kind of it wasn't a specific moment, but I kind of had this realization oh, wait, this isn't where it ends. This isn't the Christian lifestyle just to arrive and have a family and live in West Michigan and, own a house. It's like there's a lot more to it. And I was like, okay, let's do this group practice thing and let's grow it. Let's have a bigger impact. And now, looking forward from where I'm at now, I haven't a lot of these extra locations and extra clinicians. I have to be honest, I haven't worked super hard for them. There's been some that I have worked hard for. But a lot of them just happened organically or naturally. I say God brought them into my life. And some of them say the universe brought them into my practice. That's great. We're growing, we're having impact, but I am, and my clinicians know this too. Like they know that I'm always thinking bigger and I don't have a specific vision of what that is right now, Dan, but I know, and you know this about me, that I'm always looking for what's next. And I'm not spending a ton of time and energy just seeking out every little thing, but I've got my eyes open. I live life with my eyes open and I evaluate opportunities all the time. And I do hope and believe that there will be another opportunity where I can use the gifts and talents that God has given me and the resources that He's given me to do something with an even greater impact that doesn't involve just adding another location. As much as I love helping therapists, I'm not going to stop doing that. I don't plan on selling my practice anytime soon. But if God asked me to, I wouldn't hesitate in order to, because sometimes something has to die for a new life to come out of it. I love talking about that. I think it's a biblical principle, but I think it's a life principle that you don't really get something greater unless something else dies. You have to sacrifice something to get to the next level or to get to where you want to be. And so I'm ready to basically do that. And I don't think that that's going to include selling my practice. I don't feel like that right now. It could change, but I do feel like, once some things come together in other realms of business and personal, I think this year or early next year, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit bigger. And I pray that the Lord will have His hands on it and that'll be having a positive impact on our world.
Very cool, Ryan. None of that surprises me, knowing you a bit.
Yep.
So when you're not doing this important work, when you're not growing your group practice, I know that you do real estate on the side, but when you're not working as hard as you do, what do you do outside of work for fun?
Yeah. I'll tell people that there's, aside from my love for the Lord, I love two other things. I love my family and I love mountain biking. You'll see me on the floor being a 3-year-old with my 3-year-old and getting in trouble. My wife yelling at us that it's past bedtime and we're still giggling, laughing, and wrestling. Those are probably some of the funnest times of the day for me. And I also get out and ride the trails at least a couple times a week and try to stay in fairly good shape. I'm actually doing like 10 mountain bike races this year, which I've been really excited about that. And found kind of a team that I'm kind of hanging out with those guys. So that's what I'm doing outside of here. And as kind of another little quick side note about the psychology practice, I tell all of my contractors that this is the life that I want all of them to be able to have, to manage their own schedule, to work hard and play hard and live well. So that's kind of my mission vision for growing a practice, is to have a practice where there's all sorts of different therapists, one for every client, and all the therapists are doing their best work because they're where they're called to be.
Couldn't agree more with that idea,
Yeah.
Ryan. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing your distinctiveness.
Yeah.
Such a rich conversation as I knew it would be. So
Yeah. Thanks for asking the good questions, Dan. Those were good.